Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Hi there everyone, welcome to my workshop on how to host a panel. If you haven't met me before, my name is Nova, I co-lead Furry Valley, and I'm in charge of our upcoming Virtual Furcon. If you're here, you're probably interested in hosting your own panel, in which case we'd be happy to have you. We'll be running our Furcon from Friday, January the 14th, to Monday, January the 17th, with our panels hosted hourly from 8 a.m. to midnight Eastern. After this workshop is over, if you have not already contacted myself or Inari, feel free to send me a message if you're interested in hosting a panel, but even if you're just here to listen and learn, you're absolutely welcome to stay. So first off, what is a panel? A panel is where you're given an uninterrupted hour to discuss whatever it is you're interested in. While many people have expressed concern to me, saying something along the lines of, "Oh, well, I'd love to host a panel, but I'm afraid no one's going to be interested in my thing." I can promise you that while many people are going to go to specific panels because they're interested in that specific topic, more often than not, they're going for the passion and the excitement of the panelists. We've had people do panels on music creation and have a crowd full of people who've never played an instrument. We've had someone who did a panel on the Resident Evil lore and had people who joined who have never played a game in their life. But they all had a great time because they could see just how impassioned and involved the panelist was with their topic. So if you can be excited for a full hour on whatever it is you want to talk about, be it Resident Evil lore or be it sous videing, I promise you your audience will be into it too. Alright, so that brings us to our first topic. How do you pick your panel? Your panel should be on something you care deeply about or have a ton of knowledge about. While prior preparation is necessary, you'll have the most success picking topics that require minimal research or brainstorming. Consider it like this. If someone challenged you to speak for as long as humanly possible about a topic without stopping, what are you going to pick? What excites you so much that you could literally talk someone's ear off about it? Topics like that are going to be your most successful because it's obvious that's where most of your passion is going to come from. It's where you're naturally engaged. It's where you want to be able to share your own emotions about these things and get other people to feel those same emotions. That's the great part about a panel. It is about teaching. It is about providing a learning opportunity, but it's also about being able to make people feel the way you feel about these topics. So how do you prepare for your panel? The first step is deciding a basic structure of what you're going to discuss. A panel should have a distinct beginning, middle, and end, which is something to introduce your topic, the bulk of your topic, and something that concludes the discussion in such a way that it feels like you've reached the natural end of its course. If you see here... Oh, I did not even start streaming on Discord, did I? That's not very useful for y'all, is it? Screen.
I did provide them the Twitch link, though. I've gone on Twitter and such and advertised it there too, so hopefully we're getting some at least.
Alright, so if y'all do not want to watch on Twitch and you would rather watch through Discord, this is what I use. I'd like to format my panels in an outline format. I do this for a couple reasons. First, it allows me to visualize my panel so I can better determine what subtopics should go where in my timeline, and it also forces me to put in that prior preparation I mentioned earlier to make sure that I'm not including things that don't provide enough content or end up being an aside that ruins the flow of my presentation. Every time I give an example, I love to use one example in particular, and that is eggs. So let's say I am hosting a panel on eggs. I have my flowchart here, my outline. I have my introduction. I have my first bulk of my presentation, the cultural significance of eggs. And as you can see, I was able to come up with 3 distinct subpoints. That makes it its own self-contained section where I can get enough content out of it that I can comfortably say that it's worth the full 15 to 20 minutes I'm going to spend on it. Now, if I'm talking about eggs, obviously I have to talk about Danny DeVito. That makes sense. Danny DeVito does that funny thing with the eggs. But when I really boil it down, when I try to add it into my outline, what I find is, while yes, I enjoyed it, yes, it was funny, that it really doesn't have enough content, enough substance for it to warrant its own section. So from there, I've got to rethink what I'm going to do with my panel. What's going to make up the second half of my panel that can take up as much time and provide as much substance as that first section. Yes, I can still include this Danny DeVito thing, perhaps as a graphic to supplement one of my points, but it's not going to be worth any sort of real discussion. Obviously, this is going to be your panel, so you can discuss whatever you'd like, and you can format it however you'd like, but be wary. Something that you think might make a great addition might not provide nearly as much content as you think it will. Now, when it comes to writing your panel, this comes to whatever is going to make you the most comfortable as a speaker. If you've never done any sort of public speaking before, you'll likely find yourself writing down everything you want to say verbatim. And while in the case of a virtual convention, this might work as no one can see you, it also might make you sound scripted or even ingenuine, as I might sound now, as I have written some of this out verbatim to express this to you the way that I believe is going to be the most efficient. You should be talking about what you're passionate about. So you shouldn't really need to struggle to find the words once you've decided what it is you want to say. If there are particular phrases that you think are integral to your speech, feel free to write those down, as I have here. But instead, prepare a set of bullet points so that way you can follow along. This will allow you to follow your outline and keep yourself organized, but it also lets you speak in a more organic, natural way. And yes, I do get it, have done this for quite a while. Speaking off the cuff is scary. But once you've prepared ahead of time, I promise you you'll be fine as long as you've thought out what it is you want to say, even if you don't have all the words right in front of you. And I'll tell you up front, I've got a lot of practice public speaking. I was a representative of many clubs in college. I was a college debater as well, and I host Furry Valley Sleuth Talk if y'all have ever joined that. And I'll tell you, every time I've had to start one of these new things, because they are drastically different forms of public speaking, I wrote down absolutely everything ahead of time. And yes, it means that I wasn't misspeaking as much, but it also means that I sounded, in a way soulless. I sounded like I was reading off a script. I sounded like I was playing a part instead of just being Nova. And so now that I've gotten more comfortable, especially with the floof talk, I've prepared less and less. I'm writing down less and less beforehand, and yeah, that might mean I misspeak. I mean, you've heard me misspeak a couple times already now, but my presentations sound more like me, and people like that. People are not coming, like I said earlier, people are coming, yes, to see your panel based on what the topic is, but more than anything, they're coming for you. They want to see what it is you want to say, what gets you excited. This is one of the most important parts of the preparation. What causes most people to freeze up or panic when speaking publicly for the first time is a lack of proper practice. Don't be afraid to run through your panel ahead of time, be it by yourself with a timer. You can record yourself and listen back, or get up with a friend or colleague who you know won't judge you and will provide you with feedback. The first time presenting a panel can be scary, I know that, but once you get your feet wet ahead of time, I promise you that the practice and repetition makes presenting yourself significantly easier each time you do it. Now, before we move on to our visual portion of this presentation, I did want to reiterate a couple issues that people might have when public speaking. So, the first problem that you might see is a lack of organization. So, as I mentioned earlier, I like to use an outline format. There are 3 steps to ensuring that your organization is done properly. Before writing, prepare yourself an outline, be it the way that I formatted myself, be it in the form of a flowchart, or even if it's just a numbered bullet list, as long as you know what it is you want to say, as long as you know how to get from point A to point B to point C from beginning to end, any way to organize ahead of time is going to allow you to ensure that your panel is of the highest quality and ensure that you're not meandering or just, listing out a series of facts instead of presenting something. When you're writing, you should prepare a flowchart or series of bullet points. This is going to be a more expedited version of that outline that you initially prepared. This allows you to have something to follow along with as you speak. Again, you can provide specific quotations in your notes if you want to say something in a very specific way, but largely this should be just a means of making sure that you stay on track and on topic. Again, the more personality you inject into this, the more that you put yourself into your presentation as opposed to trying to format it like an essay or a school project, the more people are going to be engaged, the more people are going to want to be engaged. And finally, after writing, consider where you struggled most. You can do this after you created your presentation. You can do it after you've actually presented. The only way you're ever going to get better is through active learning. Simba and I have talked about that quite a lot in Floof Talks and other workshops that we've hosted in the past. If you just go out and ramble a whole bunch of things that you said, it might work as a panel, but until you sit down and really think about it, look at where people were most engaged, look at where you felt you struggled the most, until you actually try to use that experience as a means to learn from yourself, you're not going to improve. So make sure that your presentation does not end when the presentation is over. This is always an opportunity to learn and grow and develop your skills. So don't be afraid to go back and listen to yourself again. Get feedback from people who were there. Figure out what it is that you can improve on so next time those problems don't arise the next time. The next problem that we see is a lack of confidence, and I know this is a scary process. I think public speaking is listed as one of the biggest fears that most students and adults share. So, how do you address a lack of confidence? First, remember, as I've said, people will come for the panel topic, but they are coming for you. Be confident about that. That's exciting. People are going not just to learn, but because they want to be involved. They want to get to know more about you and your passions, your interests. This is really empowering. I mean, when I first started public speaking, initially I felt, oh, I just need to write everything down ahead of time. I need to get it over with so that way I can, ease the stress. I won't have to deal with it anymore. But when you take an active role in it, when you really try to put yourself into your own presentation, your own panel, you'll find that next time you do it, it's not going to be nearly as stressful. And in fact, while I do get butterflies in my stomach every time I have to do a public speaking event, it's definitely not the same sort of stage fright, deer in the headlights terror that I initially experienced. And remember, when it comes to confidence, you can't be something you're not. Yes, you should try to act in the most confident way possible. Yes, you should try to be someone that people want to listen to. But when you try to put on a persona that doesn't belong to you, you try to be something that you have no practice being, or you try to speak on topics that just are not true to you, you're not going to have that same confidence because you're not speaking from a place of authority. You're trying to put on the hat of someone who has that authority. This is your panel. You should be talking about something that you are passionate about, that you are knowledgeable about. As Simba has said before in Floof Talk, if you are even moderately acquainted with an idea or a concept, chances are you're going to know more than 95% of people in that room. So you will be the authority. They are looking to you for guidance or knowledge or opportunities to learn. So don't be afraid. This is about you. This is about your ability to convey your ideas. As long as you're picking a topic that is something true to your heart, I promise you that everyone's going to stay engaged. So make sure that you don't let your lack of confidence get in the way. In fact, it can be a great boost to your confidence. And finally, one of the problems that you might see is a lack of preparation. So, like I mentioned in the organization section, make sure that you have organized yourself beforehand and ahead of time. Do your research if necessary. This is important if you plan on discussing something quite in depth that you might need a refresher on. There is no shame in that. Yes, you are supposed to be here as some form of expert or authority on what it is you're speaking about. But when it comes to something that requires quite a lot of information, you have a lot that you would like to present in a short period of time, there's no shame in making sure that you've got sources lined up, that all the information that you have is correct and nothing's been misremembered. And finally, practice, practice, practice. If you go in blind, if you do not have any sort of rehearsal ahead of time, if you jot down all your notes and then go in expecting to be able to speak flawlessly, you're going to have a bad time. So make sure that when you go into your project that you have an idea of how you would like to frame yourself. You have an idea of what specific things you would want to say as opposed to just having general topics that you have prepared. It doesn't matter how much experience that you have as a panelist, as a public speaker. I promise you, every person who does public speaking for a living, be them motivational speakers, be them lecturers, they're looking over their notes 7, 8, 9 times before that speech starts, unless it's one that they've done time and time and time again. If you do not practice, you will struggle. And struggling is okay, but I know that the more that you struggle while you're in one of these presentations, the more mistakes you make, the easier it is to get caught up in your head. No one's really going to be paying that much attention to that. I promise you that you're going to kick yourself if you say a word incorrectly, but most people aren't listening for that. They're listening for the content. So don't allow it to distract you, but make sure that you minimize those opportunities for you to misspeak because it makes it significantly less likely for you to end up caught up in your own head. All right, now we can move on to our visual resources. These can be anything people follow along with, be it a pre-prepared video, a shared screen walking you through the process if the panel is about live demonstration, a slideshow like I'm currently using, or whatever best allows you to communicate your ideas. Personally, I like to use slideshows since most of what I do when I do any sort of public speaking is explanatory as opposed to demonstrative. So I use my slides to either give a visualization of my ideas, like I did for that outline earlier, or I use it to reinforce what I'm trying to say. While yes, you could communicate everything you might want to without any sort of visual help, this gives your audience something to look at and focus on. Most people don't want to just sit and listen to a lecture for an hour at a time. They want something they can feel engaged with. And something like a slideshow, though not necessarily interactive, at least gives them something to follow along to. I mean, how many times have you had tried to have a conversation with someone and, if you get 5 minutes into your little speech or you're trying to relay a story, they pull out their phone because, they feel like they need something to look at, something to not necessarily distract them, but give them some sort of visual feedback to what it is they're hearing. So preparing some sort of visual will allow you to have a better grasp and engagement with your audience. So what shouldn't your slide look like? This slide in particular I've written here highlights a couple things that you shouldn't do in a presentation. First, have you ever had a teacher who obviously wasn't engaged with or prepared for the class that they had, so they read exactly what's in the book or in their notes word per word? When they do that, I personally feel like I could have just saved the time by reading it myself. Instead of writing out exactly what you plan on saying, prepare a list of bullet points for people to follow along with, but make sure the bulk of the substance is through your presentation. In addition, no one likes a block of text. Find ways to break up the monotony, be it with a picture, chart, GIF, whatever might catch their eye. So, in comparison, here is what a slide should look like. It should have brevity. It should make sure that there is no information that you cannot already speak about involved in this slide. This should just give an idea of what's going to be introduced in your topic. It ensures engagement. You can see I've got little animations and such. This it doesn't seem like it should do all too much. But even the little things, anything that catches people's eyes, anything that allows them to feel like they are in a presentation as opposed to being talked at, will allow yourself to keep a better grasp of your audience. And finally, it allows you to be more flexible. If I had the opportunity to look at Twitch chat right now, to look at speaking voice, I would be able to look at your comments. I wouldn't be forced into a very specific set of words or phrases that I had planned ahead of time. Someone might make a comment that I feel is a great addition to what I'm speaking about. Someone might ask a question that I feel would be better answered now as opposed to the end during the question and answer portion of the panel. And of course, I added this cute fox because anything that is cute is going to get a furry's attention. While this is obviously not the best use of a graphic, it at least offers something that breaks up the monotony, as I mentioned earlier. There's a nice contrast of color. It's something that gets people's eyes. Don't forget to make the most of the resources available to you. No matter how smart someone is or how old they become, there is one fact of life. We all want things to be exciting, even in an educational context. Something minor like that text animation for this slide may not seem like a huge addition, but it does force people to hang on your words and pay more attention. Now, you can overdo this. Please don't do this. Certainly don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, that's way too much. Random screaming fox. So the issues with this slide here is while yes, it is eye-catching like I mentioned before, there's no structure here. It forces people's eyes to jump all around the screen. The animations, while cute, are unvaried. Or rather, they are too varied, so it doesn't look like there's any sort of cohesive purpose to this panel. Even though it can add some sort of levity to the situation, it might, especially if you're speaking about much heavier topics, it might at least give that sort of shock value of, oh, well, this is more fun than I thought it would be. It's just loud, it's obnoxious. Most people are going to look at it and they're not going to say, oh, that was fun. They're going to say, what the hell am I looking at? This is very unprofessional. So if you are going to do this, and I am going to move back to that last slide if it allows me to. I am going to have to move back for that. I hate Google Slides. The way that I formatted this here, it looks like it has a proper format. Everything is aligned properly. I do have animations, but they're not particularly loud. Instead, they are all the same and they are understated. And my picture isn't doing anything that would distract from the content. While yes, it doesn't make a lot of sense in this context, it isn't moving around. It stays in one place. It doesn't take up too much of the screen, and it has a balance with the words on the other side instead of potentially covering up content or forcing me to look at anything other than those words. So, in conclusion, public speaking is scary, and that's okay. Everyone is afraid of this. The only people who are not afraid of this are the people who have had years and years and years of practice or, have never really struggled with putting themselves in the spotlight in the first place. Performing is scary, lecturing is scary, speaking in public is scary. Having all of that attention on you and only you is going to cause some anxiety if you're not used to it. And there is nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you a bad speaker, it doesn't mean that you have a weakness, it means you're human. Most people have some sort of issue with public speaking. Once you get your feet wet, as I mentioned earlier, though, it's going to be easier, I promise. Everyone messes up, and that's okay. You've heard me a couple times throughout this presentation. I've said the wrong words. I've minced up my sentences. I've had to take short pauses to try to regain my thoughts. That is perfectly acceptable. I'm sure that at the end of the day, while because I have given this in a more educational, demonstrative context, that y'all are going to say, well, I did notice that Nova made a couple mistakes, but I really feel like I learned more from what was being said as opposed to the way that he said it. People care about the content. As long as your mistakes do not become distracting, as long as you're not messing up every single sentence, I promise you that most people are not going to even recognize that there was a mistake made in the first place. And if they do notice it, then it's only going to stay in their mind for a couple minutes at most while they continue to listen and move on from it. You might be anxious, and that's okay too. There is absolutely no problem with not being comfortable with this, no matter how long you do it, no matter how much preparation you have. You're going to go in, you're going to have butterflies in your stomach, and that is perfectly fine. As long as you remember that this is about you, this is about your opportunity to share your interests and your passions. I promise you that anxiety is going to become excitement. That's how it happens every time for me. Every time I go in a little anxious, that turns into a nervous energy that eventually just becomes energy. I might, even these days, when I prepare for Floof Talk, the 15 minutes beforehand, I do stress. I do drink quite a lot of water. I try to, psych myself up. And halfway through, I find that nervous energy has become, genuine excitement. It becomes fun. And most importantly, have fun. This is your panel. This is what you want it to be. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to speak about topics that you're afraid most people won't relate to. As long as you have the passion, you have the engagement with your topic, as long as you are willing to put in the work to prepare something that you would be proud to show another person, I promise you, people in the audience will have fun. They will be engaged. They will want more from you. And that was all I had prepared for this workshop. So, because this is supposed to be an interactive workshop, I wanted to open up the floor for questions and comments. So I'm going to move my Twitch assets over to Floof Talk, so I've got the opportunity to see what y'all have to say on Twitch as well as in speaking voice. I'm going to start with Twitch. I believe that's going to be easier. Let me stop sharing my stream. Alrighty. Let's see. Chris Wannabyte says use a pop filter. Yes, I do agree. This is actually something that y'all might want to consider as you prepare your own panels. A big part of it is going to be about what you have available to present, but it is also about the hardware. Make sure that you're doing your presentation from a quiet area. I know a lot of y'all might live with your family or have roommates or live in a dorm. Yeah, it's going to be rough. Figure out what you can do to try to minimize any sort of distraction. Make sure that your words come out as clearly as possible. In this case, yes, I probably should be using a pop filter, but I am currently using a headset as opposed to setting up my microphone properly because my own pop filter broke. Quite unfortunate. I'm going to have to get that fixed. But the preparation that goes beforehand is not just going to be your verbal and your visual assets. It's also going to include what you can do to prevent any sort of external factors from negatively affecting your presentation. All right, let's move on to learning voice. Okay, I guess we don't have any questions in there. I was actually expecting us to have quite a few more people join us. It's quite unfortunate. So, guys, don't be shy. Any sort of questions you have, any sort of comments, or if you yourself are an accomplished public speaker and just wanted to share your own advice, we do have Learning Voice to give your opinions or your comments, Twitch chat as well. Yes, do play exactly. So he mentions when it comes to nervousness, it's the same as working theater. Imagine being minutes away from the premiere of a play you finally prepared half a year for, and then it finally starts and everything just works out well. Not necessarily perfect, but good enough that no one cares or notices the small mistakes. So I like the comparison to theater. Uh, when you're involved in a project like this, you're going to know what the end product is supposed to look like. Most people, especially when it comes to a panel, something that you yourself have invented for this specific purpose, they don't know what the final product was supposed to look like. Only you know what that final product is supposed to look like. The only time that you will ever bring mistakes to the forefront is when you yourself mention it. There's a story that my mom likes to tell where she went to one of her friends' houses and they had just remodeled their bedroom and it was absolutely beautiful. She loved everything about it. They put a lot of effort into the wallpaper and the siding and stuff like that. And she makes a comment, "Oh, it's beautiful. You guys did a great job. I don't see how anyone could see anything wrong with it." And one of them says, "Oh, yeah, well, we actually messed up the corner over there on that part of the wallpaper." And from that point onward, every time she went into that bedroom, that was all she could see. And she would have never noticed if it was never pointed out to her. If you make a mistake, just roll with the punches. And yes, as Juplay says, that when it comes to nervousness, it will all be fine once it's over, and in fact, you'll have a great time as you do it. Just don't get too far in your head. Don't focus too much on the mistakes you make, and everything's going to be fine. Let's see. I wanted. Liam says he wants to do like a live tutorial for VR chat avatars, but some things you'll need to. You've got info that would be nice on slides, but you also want to have a demonstration essentially. So he asks if it's going to be too messy if he switches between streaming slides and Unity. So we have had people do things that are very similar. We had a panelist who actually swapped between like a slideshow panel, something that they had on their computer, and a real life camera. This is just going to take some practice. I don't think it's going to be too sloppy as long as you know how to most seamlessly transition from one to the other. If you're streaming on Discord, it's actually quite easy. You just click where your the button that shows what you are streaming in that moment. You can switch the panel over just like that. I would say give it some practice first. Personally, when I was preparing for this panel as well as my previous Furcon panels, I have a private server that is just me with a couple VCs and text channels. This is where I draft out announcements. It's where I test my microphone settings, stuff like that. Create yourself your own little channel and just give it a shot. See what kind of system works best for you. Maybe there's a macro that will allow you to switch easier. Perhaps you'll find that instead, just displaying your entire desktop and using an Alt tab is going to be the best way to switch your uh, switch where your content is coming from. You're not going to know what's going to work best for you until you actually try. So I definitely say give it a shot. But as far as is there anything inherently wrong with that system? No, I don't believe so. Yes, Verger, absolutely. Practice with a stopwatch or clock first, as I said before. uh, especially if you're someone who likes to write excessively, which as I said before, you should try to avoid. You should try to speak more off the cuff wherever you can because it is going to sound more natural. Uh, what looks like a giant block of text may actually turn out to only be 3 minutes worth of content. It depends on how quickly you speak. It depends on how much it's dependent upon the visual resources that you have prepared for it. As y'all saw in my slideshow, I did not have a lot of animations going on. I did not have a lot of actual visual assets. It was more bullet points that I could speak off of. And as a result, there really wasn't a lot of downtime. You did not see me take a lot of pauses except where I needed to regain my train of thought. So yeah, make sure beforehand when you're practicing. First, if you have someone who's willing to work with you to practice with you, I promise you that the extra feedback's going to be great. You will have some people who will say, "Oh yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that." Blah blah blah. That's not going to be very useful, but at least you can gauge their interest, their excitement, and you also have an idea of how long it's going to take. You'll have an idea of what kind of questions might be asked, etc. Real thick, thank you, Chris, for the 320 cookies toward this Boost This Stream challenge. Any of y'all watching along? We currently have 2 days left. We have raised 64%, and I can donate another 2,000. So yeah, if you have some cookies, we would appreciate that. We have 15 people in Twitch chat. It's great to have you all here. I hope that y'all have learned something thus far. Do not be shy. If you have any questions about public speaking, about how to host a panel, you want me to elaborate on anything, be it the way that I prepare ahead of time, be it how I decide what I'd like my assets to be, please go ahead and ask. A huge thank to Monster Fly for the cookies as well. Big thanks to Amarok. Yes, that's another good point, Burger. When you practice ahead of time, especially with someone, you get a better feeling about the flow. Like this is the first time that I've actually given this specific workshop slash panel, whatever you want to call it. And while I believe I got out all of the information that I wanted to, I also feel like there are places where I definitely could have improved. In particular, I feel like I could have had a better transition between the verbal and visual aspects portion. I did try to add some sort of buffer in having a place where I could reiterate and conglomerate all of the past points, but I feel like I could have gone a little further with that. So I do actually plan on hosting this panel again, and I will workshop this a little bit so that I can add a little more in between those sections. I do believe my conclusion could have been better, and I would not have known this until I actually had the opportunity to sit and speak with you guys. Yes, I could have read it off 1,000 times, which I did do as I was preparing this, but it wasn't until I actually got to the bulk of it that I realized that perhaps I needed to prepare more for those specific sections because those bullet points I thought that might have taken 3 minutes apiece to go over really didn't take much more than 60 seconds. Let's see, do we have any other questions? Oh, yeah, so that's another great point, Verger. Verger is bringing up quite a few good points. I did mention this during the portion of visual assets and representation that not writing everything verbatim ahead of time gives you more flexibility. There might have been a comment that was made during the show that you feel would have made a great addition to that panel, and you can incorporate that into your panel seamlessly as long as you have not shoehorned yourself into saying a very specific set of phrases in a very specific order. Not only that, there might be a question that was asked that you feel would make more sense in that portion, especially if the question comes quite close to the beginning and you plan on going over 6, 7, 8 distinctly different topics before you reach the end. Now, there is a trap here where if someone gets excited and asks a question, it might cause a chain reaction where a whole bunch more people want to ask questions as well, which can derail your discussion, especially if those questions become further and further away from the initial topic that you were discussing. So you have to use your best judgment. If you find something that is directly associated with what you are saying in that moment and it is not too distracting, it doesn't take more than a minute or two, or perhaps they've got a very good question that you did not prepare anything for specifically but would have made a great addition to that section, feel free to take it on, but don't let yourself get overwhelmed with questions. You set this extra time at the end as I have today to ensure that everyone who has something that they feel needs to be addressed can be addressed. Yes, Hoosie mentions borrow a friend or two, see if they're able to follow along on a practice presentation. An admin, even. I'm sure we have a number of admins on our the past education team, which is now becoming a part of the MISC team. Admins that you've already spoken to and are friends with. We have people who are happy to help you out, especially if you really are interested in hosting a panel. So don't be afraid to ask. I know putting yourself on the line like that, especially when you're going to be the center of attention, especially when you're trying to assert yourself as some sort of authority or at least someone who knows quite a lot about that topic, it can feel awkward, especially if you're someone who generally does not like the spotlight. But it's going to do better for you in the long run, both with gaining your confidence in public speaking in the future and ensuring that your panel is of the highest possible quality. Now, that's another good point. It's something I should have brought up during my presentation. Hoosie mentions when you're well versed on a subject, it's easy to miss something that to you is now obvious, but is foundational to understanding. I'm sure that all of you, if you've reached a high school level, have reached college level, have had at least one teacher or professor who is just an absolute genius in whatever it is they're teaching. But because they have, this has become their life. This is just something that's become ingrained in them. They aren't a very good teacher because they only know how to explain things from the level of understanding that they have. They struggle to teach the foundations, the basics of what it is what they're speaking about, because it's second nature to them. Isn't something that they ever had to consciously think about since they themselves were basic students. So make sure that when you're going over the content of your presentation, that you aren't starting in the middle, so to speak. Yes, it might seem obvious to you that it doesn't need to be said, but you'd be surprised. Some people come in with very little exposure to the topic whatsoever. We saw this in Protzermotzer's panel for music creation. When he realized that there were people in that audience that had never played a musical instrument, had never done any sort of production, he walked through very basic things. He explained what instruments he was picking and why. He explained what the mixing was doing, why he might add echo and the effects that creates. Why certain notes work together but others don't, why some things sound discordant, and why specific sounds give you specific feelings. If he was giving this presentation to a bunch of people who were quite skilled with or understanding of music production, then he would have talked about much more advanced things. He would have skipped those little tidbits because that's stuff that we would have already known. So make sure that you're starting at the most basic level while not necessarily babying your audience, at least making sure that if they do not have the prior knowledge or the resources to understand the foundations of what you're speaking about, that they can at least follow along. No, Miles, a cookie donation is specifically for the Boost This Stream challenge. You should see at the very top of your Twitch. Oh, well, I appreciate that, Chris. And this is what I was talking about. I'm sure that the majority of y'all in Twitch chat, and I'd love to be proven wrong. I'm sure most of y'all don't plan on hosting a panel this upcoming Furcon or don't plan to be doing any public speaking in the immediate future. If you do, feel free to contact me. My name is Nova #0412 on Discord or at Nova_skunk on Telegram. I would love to see more people involved in the process. I would love to see more people hosting panels. But if you're just here to listen, then that's perfectly acceptable. And that's my point here. If y'all aren't here to learn how to be a panelist for our upcoming Furcon, why are you here? And that's because, I've created something that is engaging that y'all want to listen along to. There's no shame in that. It's okay if people are not coming specifically because they are just as passionate about what you're speaking about as you are. They're there because they want to feel engaged. They want to be able to attend something. They want to feel like they're a part of something. And more than anything, they want to be able to listen to someone who likes to talk about things that they enjoy. Why do you think people watch hour-long YouTube videos about things that they don't have any exposure to? Because they just enjoy the experience. Verger says taking questions with within the brief is a kind of a quote unquote pro move and can need some practice and assurance of the speaker to bring it to a graceful conclusion and return back to the planned briefing. That is absolutely true. Like I said, don't go overboard. Try to make sure that your topic is not being derailed. And in fact, if you really don't feel comfortable with it, there is no obligation for you to take a question in the middle of your panel. It does take some practice. I recommend doing whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. This was more so a discussion about how to make sure you can keep yourself flexible should there be something brought up or something that you remember that would not have fit into the flow of your presentation if everything was meticulously pre-planned beforehand. You would also say, more specifically, know your audience. Some desperately need the basics, others may be bored from too much simplicity of very experienced. This can be very hard in a virtual form. That is absolutely correct as well. Know your audience is just a great tip in general. But in this case, it's going to take your ability to read the audience. If you have the capability to watch along with your Twitch chat, your Discord chat as you're going through your panel, you'll be able to get an idea of what kind of level that you should keep your discussion at. I do believe Verger in particular is going to be doing two panels because his topic is quite involved. He's doing a beginner's version and a more advanced version. That's another great way to separate things if you feel like you're going to need that much time. Even if you don't think you need 2 hours, you can always separate your panel from the first half being more basic, with the second half being an application of those lessons or a more advanced version of those lessons. Being able to move from the basics into more esoteric ideas is a great way to format in general if you know that you're going to have people who are if you know that you're both going to have people who are knowledgeable about the topic and people who have no exposure to that topic. Again, you should do whatever's going to make you most comfortable as a speaker, but remember that the more that your audience feels engaged, the more that they're going to have fun and the more successful your panel is going to be. Oh, let's deal with this individual. All right. Do we have any more questions, comments, things that y'all believe should be brought up? Don't be shy, guys. I still have 15 more minutes planned for this block, so if I need to end early, I can, but I'd much rather be able to answer any questions you have. Like I try to tell all of my admins, the only stupid question is the question that goes unasked. And I promise you, people are afraid of looking foolish, so they'll often just hope someone else asks the question, and if it doesn't get asked, they say, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to have that information. If you ask a question, no matter how silly it is, I promise you someone else is likely to benefit from having that information as well. So, guys, don't be shy. If you're in Twitch chat, you can leave questions and comments there. If you're in Discord, you can leave those in Learning Voice. Miles asks, "Have I ever been in a play?" Yes, I did drama in high school. I took a. Oh, see you, Simba. I appreciate you being here. But yes, I did drama in high school. I took a acting. What the hell do they call it? I took a theater studio class in college, which required me to do a play as well as audition for a couple others, do a couple monologues. I enjoy it. Not something I could have seen myself doing long term, but I certainly had a great time. Yeah, Verger mentions here the first time that he hosted a 1 hour panel, it ran 15 minutes overtime and it still felt rushed. This is something that you're going to have experience to learn. I promise you, even if he had prepared ahead of, done the timed preparation ahead of time, you never know how it's actually going to work when you're doing it in front of an audience. So it's just something that you're going to have to get the experience of and learn from as time goes on. You will make mistakes when you first start, be it the timing was off, be it you misspeak a couple times. That's perfectly fine as long as you're learning actively, as long as you're taking every mistake that you make as an opportunity to learn and grow from. Then it's never really a failure. The only failure that you can ever have is the failure you learn nothing from. Anything else is just a learning experience. All right, do we have any other questions? I'll give us a minute or two. In the meantime, I can drink this sweet, sweet caffeine. I bought one of those C4 energy drinks. It's called Twisted Limeade, and I love anything sour. This thing tastes so good. Oh, we do have someone typing. I will be ending this shortly if no one else has any questions, though. So, once again, guys, if you're in Twitch, don't be afraid. I want to answer your questions. I want you guys to feel like you have all the information you could possibly need. Oh, and don't forget, after this, if any of y'all do decide that you might be interested in hosting your own panel, I am looking for people who are interested in participating in our January 14th to 17th Virtual Furcon. We already have scheduled quite a few people, but there is room on our schedule left, so don't be shy. And of course, if you want to run ideas by me and the rest of my team, you want to get some feedback first, we're absolutely happy to provide that as well. Can I chat a bit about how the mechanics will work for streaming on Twitch while presenting on Discord? Okay, so the way this is going to work is all of our panels will be hosted on Discord and streamed onto the official Furry Valley channel on Twitch, which we are currently streaming to now. We have a couple people who have volunteered to take part in this. I will be doing the majority of the streaming. We'll also have Aurora taking on some streams as well. Essentially, all you have to worry about is making sure that you're streaming properly to Discord. That is as simple as hitting the screen share button or the share your screen button right next to the video button. Making sure that your correct tab is selected, and we take care of it from there. You don't have to worry about Twitch whatsoever, with the exception of perhaps interacting with your audience, though I do keep an eye on Twitch chat, so I'm happy to ask questions on behalf of Twitch chat, pose their comments. Obviously, I would not do anything to interrupt your the flow of your presentation or the content of your presentation. But yeah, just make sure that you know how to stream onto Discord, and we take care of the rest. All right, guys, I have 10 more minutes scheduled, so any more questions, comments? If you have any experience public speaking yourself, if you have any advice, feel free to share that. For those of y'all who might be interested in hosting a panel, or even if you're not interested in hosting a panel just yet, if you were to host a panel, what do you think you could speak on at length with minimal preparation? What is it you're so passionate about that you feel like you would not struggle trying to create some sort of presentation out of it? We do know that Verger is going to be doing presentations on sous vide and cooking. Liam is going to be doing something regarding VR chat avatars. And I believe Canfoud is my deep sea diving guy, which I find absolutely fascinating. We're going to have a panel on essentially water-based extreme sports. I think it's absolutely fascinating. This is what I love about our Furcon. We have people from all walks of life. We have people who are going to be giving presentations on drastically different topics. Last time around, we had music creation. We had I did how to write a rap song. We had multiple people talk about the video game lore. We had someone who discussed what it's like to work in a haunted house. There's a place for everyone. If you have a passion, I promise you that people are going to be interested in showing up to listen. Liam says he doubted between the VR chat avatars and astrophysics. I think both would be absolutely fascinating panels, but yeah, those are definitely two totally different situations. Oh yes, I absolutely agree, Verger. Verger says having hosted both live and virtual, the process is quite different. And if you really are nervous about public speaking, the virtual session can be a good start as you feel more protected by the isolation caused by the tech between you and the audience. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Uh, I would say that if you are interested in learning how to public speak a virtual platform is going to be your only opportunity, then absolutely take that opportunity. I promise you, any opportunity to learn is going to be beneficial, even if it's almost like having training wheels on. But I would also say, just from my own experience, since I started doing my public speaking in person before I moved on to a virtual medium, that I would almost prefer to do it in person the first couple times, only because once you do that, I promise you, moving to a virtual situation, while it does have its own challenges, is going to be overall easier. So if you've ever had to do a live presentation, moving onto a computer, then you're still probably going to be nervous. You're still probably going to face some issues, but not nearly as many as you would if you had done the cycle in reverse. All right, I guess, last call for any more questions. We have 5 minutes left. Oh, one thing I will mention before we conclude is make sure you get plenty of rest. Make sure you are well fed beforehand. You stay hydrated. I personally suffer from some issues with attention. I don't know if it's an undiagnosed disorder or if I am just an easily distractible person. But panel exhaustion is a real thing. I can come in gung ho in the first 30 minutes, and if I find that I am, starting to get tired, I'm thirsty, my mind will start to wander. I'll struggle to form my sentences. So try to do everything you can to make sure you're in the best mental place possible. Perhaps you're someone with a lot of stamina and you're able to speak for hours on end, but me personally, I find that unless I can, constantly refresh my mind throughout the process, then once that 30-minute mark hits, I kind of struggle a little more than I would at the beginning. There's no shame in that. Just figure out where your weaknesses are so you know where to best address them. Oh yeah, Verger mentions the difference between virtual and real life presentation. I do believe that virtual presentation is generally easier, but that doesn't mean that it's only the factors involved are going to be universally easier. For example, like he mentions, when you do it in person, you can feel their energy, and you get that vibe afterward. You get visual reactions. You have immediate feedback to what it is you're saying. That makes it easier to read a room. It makes it easier for you to cater your speech toward who you're speaking to. I saw this a lot with my school's theater program was a. I wouldn't say it's prolific, but they made quite a big deal about it. Most people were expected to go, and there would be totally different groups in the audience given the day because a lot of people from the community would come by. Sometimes you would see it was largely children, so they would cater their performance to be a little more lighthearted, to have more humor injected. Whereas sometimes it would be older folk, and it would take on a much more grim undertone because those people weren't there to laugh. They were there to be engrossed in a story. You don't get that same sort of feedback when you're working from a virtual perspective. So that's where your Twitch chat's going to come in. That's where your Discord chat's going to come in. You're not going to get the same feedback, and again, tone, opinions. They're not going to read the same way as if it was done in real life as opposed to text. But I still believe that generally doing it from a virtual standpoint is easier. So if you are looking to get that practice in, that's what I would suggest. All right, last call for questions.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
Anything is an instrument if you throw it against the wall hard enough.
Let's try.
Sounds of glass breaking. Oh, well, I'm quite excited to hear that, Verger. We will have our. I do not know exactly when I'm going to release the schedule. I want there to be a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? I want there to be some anticipation behind it. But once it is finalized, I'll make sure that we can release that and we can start teasing specific topics. It's on
All
reviewing,
right.
editing, and proofreading tips. Okay, that's fun. I'm sure a lot of people will take something to learn from that.
What are you gonna do your panels on? Obviously, we'll do floof talks, but do you have anything in particular in mind you can tell these lovely floofies that you're gonna talk about?
So last time around, I hosted a panel on music creation, and it was largely about creating the structure, creating the idea, how to organize those ideas. I think this time around, I'm going to go much more specific, and I'm going to explain essentially how to write a rap verse.
That'd be cool. Or what? Write some rap songs with the audience and then perform them at the end with the beat. That'd be cool.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. I can definitely make that a little more of a live demonstration as opposed to a lecture like last time. I'd love to
Yeah,
get the audience involved. I'm sure that some of y'all have some hot bars that you're ready to spit.
yeah. Well, we've seen them play Jackbox.
Goodness gracious, as long as there's no spaghetti bars.
Oh, well, he won, didn't he?
He won every time with it, yeah. Alrighty, so it looks like we have run out of questions and we are running out of time. So I do want to say a huge thank you to all of y'all who came out for this workshop. I hope you learned something. Once again, if you have decided that perhaps you are interested in hosting your own panel, feel free to contact me. I am Nova #0412 on Discord. I am at Nova _ skunk on Telegram. As I mentioned before, as long as this is something you're passionate about, as long as it is a topic that you can speak on capably and confidently, there's going to be a space for you, no matter how niche or how obscure that topic is. Obviously, we are going to have to veto some ideas. If you want to do a panel on how to watch paint dry, perhaps you can come up with something a little more interesting than that. But as long as we are not learning how to watch paint dry or watch grass grow, I promise you there is a place for you. Even if you don't plan on doing a panel, I hope you learned something anyway. I hope that you can take these lessons and feel more confident the next time that you have to do a public speaking event. And I guess with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this workshop. So, big thanks to everyone who joined us. I hope to see you involved in the Furcon. Even if you don't get involved in the Furcon, I hope to see you participate in the Furcon in some way. We're going to have raffles. We're going to have game events. We're going to have something like, can I do quick math? 14 panels a day for 4 days. Again, that time is going to be from 8 a.m. to midnight Eastern on January 14th. That's Friday to January 17th. That's Monday.
Yeah, and thank you to Mr. Kins for the interesting workshop. A lot of people here, a lot of engagement, more than I expected we'd get. So that's excellent. Thank you all for tuning in. And we've got a link to our Discord and to our Telegram in the Twitch chat for those of you who may not already have it.
Absolutely. If you are not part of those platforms, that is where we spend most of our time. So feel free to join us. Feel free to chat with us. Would love to see you a part of the community. Alrighty, I am going to go ahead and close this workshop. So one more time, thanks for coming out, and we will see you next time. Take care, guys, and have a fabulous day.